Hello. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of Eat This, Drink That. Ali has a freshly washed hat. He will be our food expert for the day. Steve just made a lot of people happy with scotch yesterday. He's going to be our beverage expert for today. And Steve, let's kick off with your Drink That for this week. What are we doing?
So we're going to dive into beer types. It's pretty straightforward. Beer.
Yeah, right. That ends right now. Pretty straightforward. Cue
Yeah, right.
Greer's deep dive.
So beer is really simple. Grain, hops, yeast, water. That's it. 4 ingredients. There's 2 types. Okay. There's an ale and there's a lager. And that really is about the yeast itself. So ales are a top fermenting yeast, so it all stays on top of the big tank of sugar water. And It goes fast, and it's a little warmer. But lagers are a bottom fermenting yeast. It goes very slow, very deliberate, completely different flavors coming from both. That's really it. So, and lager just
so
means,
we have this chart, right?
What's that?
Didn't we? I posted a picture. I posted this beer picture on our IG page, and it's clearly like lagers is the top half and ales is.
Oh, you mean that cool SoundCloud or whatever the
like a chart sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's ales and it's lagers. And lager just means to store. So in Germany, when they were doing it, they would store it in a cold place and let the fermentation just keep going. There's actually really
lager is a bottom, ale is at top.
Bingo. Bingo.
We're talking about which one's a top and which one's a bottom at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. I'm going to need more coffee.
About beer, too.
Beer.
And then we can dive into all the different styles, but there's different steps inside the process of making beer that will create a completely unique style. So your beer steps, I just simplified them. You got your malting stage, you got your mash, you got your wort, W-O-R-T, you got your fermentation, and you have your maturation. So we'll start back. Beer steps. I simplified them. Well, I mean, I didn't simplify them. I just cut out a lot of unnecessary information. You got your malting, you have your mashing, you have your wort. That's when, that's the sugar water, basically. Fermentation, maturation. So it's pretty easy, but in all these processes, you can change what you're doing. So in the malting part, you have to convert the cereal grain into sugar because there's no sugar inside rye or barley. You have to get that starch converted over. So you do that with germinating. You just soak the grain in water and it starts to basically flour. And then you dry it to stop it. And then you have to crack those things open and get all that sugar out into a liquid so you can do fermentation.
Wow.
But here, with the malting, you can go crazy. During the drying, you can roast it, and you can roast it almost to burnt, so you have stouts. You can add extra malt so that you have more malt, more sugar, higher alcohol to balance out.
So is malt where beer really becomes, whoa, now I've got a stout. Whoa, now I've got a pumpkin ale.
Yep. Yeah, there's that roasting.
Alcohol.
What's that?
And is this where the alcohol content is sort of decided as well?
Yep. So if you add more, if you double the malt or triple the malt or quadruple the malt, and there are styles called that in Belgium, you're getting higher alcohol. You'll get up to almost like 12 and 13% on a single beer.
Wow.
That's this guy right here. I'm lucky enough to even have one of these. It's West Vedelen. It's this normally doesn't even come into the U.S. It's from.
Did you steal that?
Yeah.
I didn't think he could top a bottle that looks like a prop from the Blade movie series, but then he had to say, "This isn't allowed into America." What the fuck?
So West Federland is
Wow.
just, you usually pull up and buy your beer there. There was an importer.
Where? West Vedelin?
Yeah, West Federland is the
Oh, the
brewery.
distiller?
Yeah, the brewery.
Okay.
Brewery.
This is their quad. So this is, I
Wow.
believe, 12%.
That looks like a quad, dude.
I just saw a
Let me
triple
just
for
look
the
at
first
that.
time.
Hang on. Let me just look at that. And let me just give maybe what a lot of people probably went through. I went through this in my 20s 20 years ago when you went into like the dude's beer store and you're like, and I remember going, okay, here's like the 12 pack of hams, here's Sierra Nevada. And then all of a sudden there was the unrefrigerated just shelf of stuff. That mofo would be the dusty one. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
the guy behind the counter also selling lottery tickets, because this is before things got super cool and dope, would be like, "It's a good one, man. That's a good beer, man. It's a good beer." But I will say, I was one of the early people amongst my ilk to be like, "Hey, try this Belgian beer." People are like, "What the hell is this?" But it is really, really cool. And it is interesting to recognize, like, you see, I mean, like, we talk about the IPAs and the super cool cans. That is the old school cool can. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So props to the quad. Props to the fact that America won't allow it here.
Well, hold on. It's
I think
not
he's
that
saying it
America.
gets sold out.
What? Go ahead, Ryan.
No distributor, right? Is that
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
what you're saying?
the actual brewery in Belgium just doesn't allow it out of Belgium. Somehow, this importer convinced the brewery to let him take whatever it was, 10 pallets of beer. It was packaged in a little 4-pack with 2 glasses. It went to a handful of states. I actually was already working with this importer and distributor when I was at K&L. So I bought as much as they would let me, and then I bought my own pack. It sold out in, I don't know, an hour.
Whoa.
All of it. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
So this one we're drinking this room temperature. Is that
No, but good question. So as you get, a little higher alcohol, you want to drink it a little warmer. So remember, we've talked about this with wines, especially white wines. 40 degrees is your refrigerator. That's perfect for the lager side that we're going to be talking about, the crisp pilsners, the German lagers, Mexican lagers. But on the ale side, you want to go a little warmer, and it changes the mouthfeel, the temperature. So for this, you're not drinking at room temperature. Orange County room temperature is 75. I'm
that's
sure
too warm.
Texas is pretty high.
98.
Yeah.
So wine
98.
fridge temperature.
Yeah.
The
So
wine fridge
let's say
sort of thing?
55 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can play with that. You might think it's too malty or too rich. You play around with the temperatures. I don't like giving hard, fast rules for a lot of things because in the end, these are drinks. These are meant to enjoy the people you're with, the food you're eating. So rules
I feel like we just have to do this, and I don't know if you guys have one. I have a Thermapen, which is a super accurate, high-speed readout digital thermometer, right?
Wow, I don't have one.
As insane as this sounds, it's going to be way too much fun not to try some degree of like a taste test of drinking a beer at certain temperatures, right? You know what I mean? Like, because if you think about it, like, you just keep letting it sit. We're going to put a pin on that. I think it'll make for a great IG live. I'm just saying, because it sounds crazy until you actually do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
All you're really asking yourself to do is take a sip now, wait, you drop the little thingy in. Okay, let's go again. So that sounds good.
It's the same thing with wine, especially red wine. When it's too cold, it tastes awful.
Yeah, true.
There was, I don't know if you guys remember the Gelsons up in Beechwood Canyon.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh wait, up Beechwood or just at
Well,
the
right there
right
on
There
Los
on
yeah.
Feliz.
Franklin, yeah.
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 So their wine selection was right in front of the cold boxes for, I think, beer. It was a very cold aisle. So if I needed a fast bottle of wine, I'd run up because I lived up there. I'd just walk up, grab it, come home. And I started to learn that their aisle was so cold because the wine needed to warm up like a good 10 degrees before it was drinkable.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Same thing with beer, maybe not quite to that tolerance, but let me go through I'll finish the two types so that we can really
Okay.
dive in to all the other stuff. So, ales, top fermenting, warm and fast. It's 3 to 5 week fermentation. The best known IPA or pale ale, and in that category, you have IPAs and English bitters.
Okay.
Lambics, which we've already talked about once with the goes. French and Belgian, so those are the Saison and the Flanders and the weird, fun little, and the quads and the doubles and the triples. You got
Okay.
stout and porter. You
Okay.
have German ale, which Hefeweizen and Berliner Weiss are not lagers; they are ales.
Okay.
I always like to
Okay.
point, yeah,
Are
Hefeweizen.
they thicker? Is an ale like kind of thicker?
It's richer, whereas lagering gets you to that crisp state where it's very crisp, very light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
And
This
then
is
you
Okay.
have brown ales are in that category too, and red ales. I don't even think people really drink brown ales that much anymore.
bro.
Oh,
Seriously, red ales was so 90s. I
I
remember
know.
like, hey,
Wasn't
Brad.
there a Heineken that was a red Heineken
Killians.
or
Yes.
Killian's? Yeah.
Well, there was Killian's, and then yeah. I remember when Newcastle was like, it's a good beer, man. Newcastle's
Or
a
I
good
think
beer.
Beck's had red and browns. I think one of those ones. That's the only. That's yeah. It's 90s. Only all I can reference is 90s for that.
Yeah, for sure though. For sure.
So then
Okay.
on the lager side, lager means the store, you're doing the bottom fermenting yeast. It's very long. That could take 6 to 8 weeks. So almost 2 months just to do fermentation. There's also a step when you're storing it later, it goes through a second fermentation and really cleans and crisps up. So these are very recognizable styles.
So it takes longer to make lagers, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You know what's interesting? I always think of, especially because of the IPA thing. IPA is expensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think of all the beers we talked about, those tops, not the bottom, the tops, I think of those, frankly, as more expensive beers. And I think of lagers as cheaper beers. But you're
Yes.
telling me lagers take longer to make
Yep.
and
Well,
cost more.
and we'll get to this too on the deep dive because the ales use more ingredients. They they use more hops. They use more malt. Yes. Um, so let's go through the best known of the lagers. Pilsner, Czech Pils. Everybody knows Pilsner Urquell. That's a Czech
Oh,
Pils.
what a great beer.
Yeah.
Freaking great. I want to have one now.
Yeah.
That's good beer, bro.
German lager, European lagers, Kolsch, which is
Time out. Those are all in
all
Europe.
different. They all have their own style. And honestly, in Germany, almost every town has their own style of their lager. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Very.
that's Norway's like that. There's certain what depending on what big city you're in, they have a different beer for that city.
Yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah. Um,
So anyways,
and then American
Oh,
lager. And inside American lager, you have the adjunct, so which is something that uses non-cereal grain. The classic is everybody now knows Budweiser uses rice. They
oh,
don't just use all cereal.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
is that a
So
good or a bad thing? I mean, let's be honest. You think lager, I think of Budweiser, I think of the cheaper, not Pilsner or Kel, obviously, right? But is that a cheap move by
no,
AB?
so it's probably a move for them to control costs, but I've had some Japanese rice lagers that were amazing. I just
Hmm.
think Budweiser is a gigantic company. I don't really care for all those beers. I don't drink them. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to say good or bad. I don't drink them.
Right.
I don't want to upset anybody. So let's go back to ales. We're in the pale
Coors
ale.
Light, though. Coors Light. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
I know, and I live right down the road from the brewery.
I like the yellow Coors can, if we're talking Coors.
Yeah.
I haven't had it in a long time, but for me, the ultimate, like, just beer, and I am from St. Louis, so I feel like I have to, like, have some, go team. Dude, a bottle of Bud, that red, I just love the look of that bottle.
Yeah.
It's a freaking boom. The can, too. Not the Bud Light. Bud Light can's a mess. Keeps changing.
Right.
But a Bud can, Bud bottle, yeah. Great.
So one of the big companies just announced that they're getting rid of a ton of labels, and I think one of them was Milwaukee's Best. So this, the
no
large,
shit.
yeah, yes.
No shit for that one.
You'll have to go find the article. There's a lot of labels. They're gone.
You know what I will do? I'll buy a 12-pack of Milwaukee's of the Beast, and I'll sell it to you and your little importer friend.
And we'll ship it back to Belgium.
I know. Yeah, maybe some town in Norway that's like, amazing. Where is this Milwaukee place?
Yes.
So, pale ales. In this category, you have American Pale Ale, so Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, IPA, and you can have double IPAs, you can have triple IPAs. So, what does it mean to go double and triple? It's just more
You're not
malt.
going to drive home.
Exactly. They double the malt. So English bitter, which is like you go into a pub in England and you ask for a bitter, it's just very nice pale ale that's got a nice bitter flavor to it, and it goes down super easy. Barley wine is in that category. Old ales are in that category. You can actually, there's can't remember what brewery in England. They age their ales in cellars, and they'll release the vintage of it. So you can have multiple, and it almost tastes whiskey-like. They're really good. So in that category, so let's talk about, we've already brought it up in an episode, West Coast IPA versus Hazy IPA. So Hazy IPA was basically New England's IPA for a long time. It was the answer to the West Coast thing. Russian River Brewing Company's Pliny the Elder. That's the big, well-known. Ballast Point had one. Sculpin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So these are the West Coast IPA. So let's go back to the beer steps. The malt, the mash, the wort, fermentation, maturation. Now you start playing around with hops. You already got the grains. You got non-roasted grains. You have double amount of grains. You have triple amount of grains. Now you start talking about the hops. Completely changes the style. Not just what hop you're using, because there's a ton of different hops. Where you add them. So you have the hot side and you have the cold side. Hot side are the West Coast IPAs. They doubled up the malt, and because you have a richer malt flavor, you got to also bitter it so they balance each other out. So they throw.
So I want to ask right now, because I feel like we know these terms, but do we know these terms? Like, what exactly are cereals and what exactly are hops? Because I feel like people they know what it does, you know what I mean? But what actually is it?
So cereals is barley, rye, and then of course corn, because you are using that for bourbons. Hops are actually a cousin of, or some sort of family member to marijuana.
I was gonna say, the thing about that hop, right, is especially when it's really hoppy, it's like it literally does smell dank. And I hate to be the middle-aged dude who has to use the word dank and just show off his age. And the fact that he still probably has the Dave Matthews, Tim Reynolds double CD floating around in his drawer. Probably this too is scratched, probably beyond repair. But more importantly, it does, like hops and weed. literally they're cousins, and it smells. You smell some of them, and you're like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I can't remember the one. I think it's a Washington hop. And I mean, it smells straight up like skunk weed. Just, that's what it smells like. So
Amazing.
there's a
Wow.
ton of different hops you can do, but West Coast guys started throwing it in the boiling stage with all that extra cereal. So you have this extra malty flavor coming into your pale ale, but they just overhopped it right then. Just bitter
And
the
wait,
hell out
sorry.
of it.
So where does the West Coast add all the hops?
So in the hot stage, so the
Boiling.
boiling stage. So it kind of gets rid of a lot of the, I think they're oils. I can't totally remember.
Is
It
this
is
in the malt stage? Is this the malt? The what?
no, you're the mash and the wort. So you're boiling this to get the sugars to come out.
Okay.
You're
This is the mash.
Yeah,
We're
you're
doing the
over
malt.
hopping right then to balance out all that extra malt,
Okay.
and
This is
you
West
get
Coast.
a really
West Coast.
bitter flavor. But because you added so much hops, it is very bitter. So
Okay.
that's West Coast.
Okay.
New England, or the hazy IPA guy. I can't even remember who did the first one or who started the term hazy. They add their hops in the cold side. So after you convert, after you do your fermentation, you're taking fresh hops, throwing it in, and you get more floral or citrus. But because of it, they're not filtering, and the oils that are coming out during that fresh hop stage, the cold side stage,
Mhm.
and they don't filter it out. That's why it's hazy.
Okay.
And it's
Okay.
completely different styles. So instead of really malty and bitter like a West Coaster, it is fresh, bright, pretty, citrusy, some, and less malty.
I
Okay.
gotta say, and it's my own fault because I keep getting them. Some of these like orangey ish IPA things, I swear to God, I think there was like little bits of orange in the freaking beer. And I love it. I love it. Like the Deschutes orange, like the
What?
juice, it's so good. It's such a like I think about the very, very first time I ever had beer, Bush bottle, 7 ounce, little long necks, bought it at the Walgreens. The old man believe my fake ID. And you're drinking it and you're like, it tastes like bread water. Like, ugh, what is this? That an old man has. I don't know. It's just weird. But then I think if I could go back in time and give myself like that Deschutes orange, I'd be like, it's kind of good. You know what I mean? It's got so much appealing flavor,
Yeah.
and it could be because I've been drinking beer for 30 years. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. So the Deschutes also makes one called the Fresh Hopped IPA. So they're adding the hops at the cold side again. So you get more of the less bitter, more floral, more citrus, depending on the hop, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, they're really pretty beers. I love that Fresh Hop IPA from Deschutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So depending on what you're doing, you can mold all these styles. And brewery guys always experiment. There's no failed attempt. Like your strawberry milkshake stout, they are constantly experimenting. So they'll add hops at different stages, hot and cold side. You're roasting some of the malts. Everything is open to experimentation in all the steps, except for really you gotta germinate your grain to get the starch to come up. You gotta boil it to convert it to sugar, and you have to do fermentation. Those are the steps you have to do. Everything
Yeah.
else is just open to
And
interpretation.
where would the flavor components be added in the process? Would this be like at the end if they were trying to make it strawberry, for example, milkshake? How would
Yes,
that be done?
yes, towards the end,
Okay.
after fermentation. I think some guys might add. So we can go back to those crazy Belgians. A lot of those are because of the yeast strains. They're doing wild ale, so the doors are, think of it in your head as the doors are open to the ambient world, and all these weird, wild microbes start coming in and sitting in
Oh,
this.
he just got so. It's like he just went like 1960s psychedelic freaking money. Is that how we should look at Belgian beer? So if we look at IPAs and using hops as like, um, you know, I'm into that token kind of music. Then if we're talking about Belgian beer, we're just into like full on like psychedelic. You might possibly end up in the insane asylum. That's what you're
Yes.
saying when
Yes.
it's Pink Floyd. It's Floyd. It's early Floyd. That's what you're saying. Early Pink Floyd.
But Steve, were you literally saying during their process they leave the doors open? Was that like a literal thing you were saying?
Yeah. So all these microbes are coming in, and that's where all these really crazy flavors start coming from, is in the fermentation. So your yeast that you choose to spike everything with changes flavors. So commercial brewers are going to use a very specific yeast strain. It goes in, it ferments, it adds the flavors that they want, and you're done. Um, let's go back to the IPA and the flavoring. Why did that happen, and how did that lend itself to the style? So India Pale Ale came from the British conquering India in their colonial whatever, but by the time they got the pale ales over to India on the boats, they were already spoiled. Hops is a natural preservative. So they would over hop it. It would act as a preservative. It would save the beer all the way over to India. And that's where the style came from. Because the British were already making pale ales. If you want to break it down, Germany is over here making lagers. England is over here making ales. They had a bitter, so they throw in the hops right in the boiling. It balances out the malt and it's bitter in flavor. Well, they took that to another level with the IPA solely because they needed stuff to get over to India.
They needed it. That's
Yeah,
interesting. I think we talked about that on IG Live at some
I think
point.
so.
The overhopping the India Pale Ale. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was a preservative. I mean,
yeah.
let's be honest. This goes back to it's like out of Days of Confused. Like, is there anything weed can't do or its cousin? It's a miracle crop. It's a medicine. The Constitution's written on it. It makes rope and it makes beer last without refrigeration. Legalize it.
You know what? I think I read that like 120 years ago, like the number one company in America was like a hemp line. Like it was only like 100 years ago. Like it was literally like the Google
Oh,
of
100 years ago. I was like, oh my God, Bezos.
yeah.
No, that's amazing. Wow.
There's
Yeah. I mean, you know, so this is another thing too, and this is going to be silly, but this is the way I'm going to remember all this stuff. When you say ale, when you say
Yeah.
ale, besides IPA, whenever I hear ale, I think of someone like kind of mocking medieval times where you'd have
Yes.
like someone going, more ale, wench. You know what I mean? But then lager, I can picture like a German guy going, I fancy some lager. You know what I mean? And it's like, to kind of go, to just kind of imagine a fictional terroir Disneyland in my mind of like, this is where this comes from. This is where that comes from. It's just,
Yeah.
kind of, it helps you guide ultimately, which is what's so baffling about beer is in today's age, it's like, I mean, of course you go to the microbrewery, whatever, craft brewery, whatever, and go have something more streamlined. But the store is interesting because I was just in the big store the other day getting my Angustura bitters,
Yeah.
and you forget about all the beers. There's so many. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I'm like like I haven't I love Peroni. You know what I mean? Like I forgot about that. Thing's
Yeah.
awesome. And Kronenberg. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
go green bottle. You can explain the green bottle wisdom in a second. But good to know. Ale, lager.
You know what? It's probably like Americanism too, like just the way we brand stuff. Like I
Yeah.
bet you most people don't even know what beer they're drinking. If they get a Budweiser, they wouldn't even know. They would just say it's a Budweiser.
It's a
They wouldn't.
Budweiser. Yeah,
Yes.
You know
100.
what I mean? We just
Yes.
don't really look at types of beers. We look at the brand name and if it's
Yeah.
light or not light, basically.
Well, those category of people that do look at all those has grown exponentially over the last 15 years. There's another generation that didn't start at Milwaukee's Best and Cuervo Gold in college and started up here with, quadruples and
Yeah.
Chablis, and they started at a higher level. Their
They
entry,
grew up on Pokemon too.
yeah,
Just
exactly. But if you ever want to do something fun, go to Beer Advocate. It's a website. They have a section that just lists every style of beer. And you can just, within each category, there's another 6 or 10 other things inside the category. You can just play around and go, oh, what's this? What's this? It's pretty
I'll check it
amazing.
out.
Yeah.
I feel like this is literally like if we did the Matrix in Greer's brain, it would be Beer Advocate. You know what I mean? It would be like, and I could be Morpheus, just like the world you know is wrong, Steve.
Are you going to drink the lager or drink the ale?
Bingo.
Choose.
And we always talk about this. We talk about this on every drink episode this season and season 2. It is a rabbit hole. It's not as simple as I would like an ale or I would like a lager. There is.
I'm gonna start that way though.
Yeah.
I'm just now I'm gonna walk away from this, at least saying this. I've been going heavy on the ale.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to go lager.
Try. So let's talk about lagers, because that category, you have your best known. You got your German, American, European, Pilsners, Kolsch. I love Kolsch. It's a lager served in really tall, there's not a lot of beer in it when you get it because they want it served crisp and cold.
Oh.
But let's go into German lager, because you have, like I said, almost every town has their own lager. You have Marzen, which has become the Oktoberfest beer. That's a little maltier.
Mm-hmm.
You have Munich lager, Dortmunder, Keller, Dunkel, Helles. But my favorite, because no one really thinks about it, is Schwarzbier. So it is a dark lager, a black lager. They just roast the malt at the beginning to a darker color, and the beer itself, so it's a lager, it's crisp, it's really pretty, but it has more depth of flavor because of that extra roasting. Yeah.
I'm so tantalized, and I want to try and fit in a Spaceballs quote. But first, you said because it's dark and rich. What would you? Because we're thinking Germany, and what's so weird about German food is has a reputation of it being bad. But you have a couple beers and a boiled sausage. Actually, sounds like a good idea. This dark beer. Tell me something to eat with that.
Blood sausage.
Blood sausage.
Blood sausage. I love blood sausage. Any heavy, rich sausage, all day long.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never had a blood sausage ever. I'm terrified.
So my 2 trips to Germany, in the morning it was deli meats.
I've been to Red Lion. No.
That's the problem. Can we just chime in for a quick second?
Yeah.
Place in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's still around.
It's still around.
Like, it's that the whole place. It's like we went there, and then like the hipsters discovered it, and it's like, but like talk about a place that needed like Gordon Ramsay, hell, even Robert Irvine to just come in and be like, "Can you please do something?" You know what I mean? And you're talking to the guy who actually ate raw hamburger there. And I don't mean undercooked. I mean, I had the steak tartare. And I remember I was like, ooh, it's the ground version. You know what I mean? It was pretty...
Wow. That's cocky. To go to the Red Line and eat all meat.
I did eat it, though. That was like I paid for it.
Red Line is still open. I was just there last fall. It's still there. It's still great. They show their football games. They show the soccer. It's always packed.
They still have cable.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah, the place is packed, and they're all sports and beer people.
So you were before we went off, and if you're ever looking for a place in Los Angeles that literally looks like something out of Bavaria, but in LA, go check out Red Lion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We were talking about the having blood sausage with the.
So I was in Germany
for breakfast. Jesus, I have gout already.
No. But in the morning, you had a hard-boiled egg, you had a plate of deli meats, and a plate of cheese. That was breakfast every day. Then for lunch was just an ocean of sausage, blood sausage, all kinds of different sausage.
Wow.
Everything that's happening, we're writing down. We're going to make a platter of this.
Yes.
I'm going to pause for a second. Do you hear the whelping?
Yes.
I heard the Maximus.
Because they just left. Let me do one thing real quick so it's not too bad. Hold on one
Yeah, we're
Okay.
good. We're good. I'd say we only have about 10 minutes left, right, Ryan?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. A plate of blood. Yeah. Maybe it's my internet. Well, Ali is not coming through glitchy, but every now and then your face gets cloudy and it stops.
And I would say the same happens to yours with me, but
Mhm.
not with Ollie as well.
Okay.
So it
So
seems like yours and mine are, yeah, having a little.
let me go turn something off. Let me try something.
Okay.
The dog.
He always gets antsy when Breely and Heath are about to leave. I don't know why. Anyways, he's outside.
Okay.
Keep going. Let's keep going.
Okay. So
Transition
we
back
probably
in.
only have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So let's go into these German lagers. And what? Oh no, sorry.
The
Cut.
sausage.
Yeah, we're going back
sausage.
to what you eat in what I ate in Germany. So in the morning at the inn that I stayed at, cheese, deli meats, hard-boiled egg, sausage for lunch, like multiple types of sausage, amazing blood sausage. Then at dinner, I never saw a vegetable ever.
I was literally going to ask.
I never saw a vegetable. And then I just ate, whatever meat was served, 2 whole chickens or, a side of beef or whatever. It was
Wow.
amazing.
You got
Pork.
because
Lots of
look,
pork. Actually, it wasn't beef, it was pork in
Pork.
Germany.
one of the things that is interesting is like, especially when you get into like you talk about variety of beer, variety of sausage, right?
Yeah.
You've got cooked sausages like super dope hot dogs, bratwurst, but then you get into like Weisswurst, veal versus pork, all that stuff. But dinner, you're being a bit vague. Like literally, like do they do they just go here is a side of beef kind of sounds interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, is it
But
just
I was kind of making up the half of a cow thing because just of the amount of meat that was on the table, but it was pork. It was like,
uh-huh.
the quarter of a pork, and it just came out on the table and everybody ate it. I mean, it's a
like
lot of
the
meat.
roasted pork shoulder
Yeah.
kind of thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
But this was, I can't remember what it was. I just remember I ate a lot of meat for days.
Wow.
God.
Yeah. So sports beer, we'll go with a lot of the German food. Yeah.
And that's a dark one, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't remember the one that all you have to do is ask for a black lager. When you go to the store, your beer store, and say, I want to try this black lager. So think of it as you still get the flavor profile of very crisp, very clean of a lager, but you get the richness of like a stout from that the
Ooh.
malt that is over roasted. So you get some of
That's
those
an
chocolatey.
interesting way to, I think, for people to really appreciate what a lager is compared to those richer ales, right?
Yeah.
Because a black lager, I mean,
Yeah.
because you're getting something that does have like that caramel,
Yeah.
but the feel of it is frankly fizzy crisp, right?
Yeah.
Compared
Yeah.
to like that thick boy, triple
The big
hoppy.
stout. Yeah.
Listening
like
to
this
that
stout.
Jimmy
Like
Matthews
this.
Band double CD.
Yeah, like this stout. So this is Alpine Beer Company down in San Diego. They're up in the mountains. This is their Captain Stout. When they first opened, this might be 11 or 12 years ago now. You had to buy it at the brewery. People would line up with their growlers and whatever to buy all the beers they would release. They did a double IPA, I think, was called Duet. They had a few beers. Double IP was at the height of that explosion.
San Diego area,
So, yeah.
you're saying?
What's
This
that?
was San Diego?
Yeah, so you should go. It's in the town of Alpine. It's really cute, old, like
Alpine.
almost a mountainy, westerny town feel to
I've
it.
never been there.
Yeah, and then you can sit and eat and Alpine beer come. Ryan, you are now in the epicenter of the beer world.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Being in
breweries.
South Orange County, you can be anywhere you want.
Yeah, South Orange County, there's a lot of breweries opening up in like San Clemente area, and yeah, they're having a whole festival out here next month, so I might attend. We will see. Yeah. All day.
So you had a really good point on this. What do you drink or what do you eat with a black lager? What do you eat with all these beers? So because of the range of style, beer is very apt in pairing better than people think it is. Most people said they think beer is for sitting in the backyard, maybe a burger on the grill. You can all kinds of roasted meats, all kinds of roasted birds, everything, even sauces. And beer will be more adaptable than people think for food pairings. Yeah.
I remember one of the interesting conundrums of pairing beverage with Indian food, and one of the easiest answers is beer.
Yeah.
Beer works so well. Even just the idea of, it sounds funny to say this, but Indian food's it's stews, braises.
What about
So
ciders?
that carries with it a certain kind of temperature. So it's like you want a cool drink to have with warm food like that. That alone, I think, helps a lot. And then it's kind of funny. Then you can default it to good old champagne sparkling wine because that seems to, behave.
And like Ryan was just about to say, cider. I just did the Bass cider with Indian food with friends of mine. We went out, had really good Indian food actually, and I brought a Bass cider. And they were like, "Well, I've never done that," and they loved it, and it was perfect. And on that note, I don't want to group. I don't like grouping cider into beer. At every store, it is.
I was going to say, let's not. I want to keep the lane.
That's why I brought it up.
I think it's its own thing. It's unfair to cider to group it into the beers.
So yeah, I guess it would be interesting to figure out what to pair with some of these Indian food, like you said, because I think like you said, Steve, most people are probably having a beer at the barbecue, and that's about it. A lot of the American drinking, like you said, is sort of you're drinking to drink the beer. It's not necessarily paired.
Yep. And what's the Indian beer? Kingfisher?
Yeah, that's, and it's funny, I probably can count on one hand, the times I've had it. I think one of the things that's interesting about all of this stuff, too, is I'll equate it with red wine, right? Between, say, California drinking. If we got, Ridge Zinfandel, I'd be like, heck yeah, let's sit down, pop this open, we're drinking it, right? But if, we had, an Italian red, French red, I'd be like, oh, well, we need food, too, And I think the big difference here when we talk about this beer is, IPA, man, I'm not thinking about food at all. When I'm talking about the Deschutes Orange, I'm like, no, this just right here, baby. Right here. This is it. This is why we're here for this. This is my favorite beer. But it's a whole different conversation when you're like, I'm going to have this one beer. And you basically, you're not just hanging out and drinking. You're going, no, I want to have this particular taste with, this other taste, and I think, it's weird. Now I'm starting to think what would you, because I just drink these IPAs. I drink hazy IPAs. What would you eat? I can't even think of it. What would pair very well with these super popular IPAs you see everywhere?
You can do all the tacos that you run around town in Austin and eat. Those would go very well
those
together.
So good with Coronas
tacos,
too. Coronas and tacos.
Barbecue. I just looked up. I wasn't sure what style Kingfisher was. Since a lot of colonialism went into India, I was thinking, oh, I bet it's an English ale of some sort. It's a pale lager. It's just a pale lager.
Yeah. So Crosby, your move is Corona with tacos. You popped it.
Yeah, well, when Steve mentioned the IPA thing, I was Coronas or any of the Mexican styles. I think we have there's a couple other ones that are sort of popular now, and any of those are really good. Um, I guess that would be Mexican lager style. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's their
I've
style.
had a few Mexican style lagers. Like it's I'm not a big advocate of this, but I've drank it and I actually enjoyed it. Lone Star, which is the Texas version
Oh
of
wow.
Budweiser,
Yep.
which I don't like. I mean, you know what it is. It's just a beer, whatever. You know what I mean? It's a you're at the ballpark and you're like, give me a large. That's what
Yeah.
Lone Star is. Okay,
Yeah.
they make like their Mexican lager. It's pretty cool, cool looking can. Yeah, it's funny. It makes me think about what Greer just said. Like, oh, any of those tacos you're running around town having. There's a whole other palate choice conversation. Just marinate on this for a second.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be our tip into maybe a possible new episode. Your faves. Like, I freaking love hazy IPA. I freaking love a really good carnitas taco. You know what I mean? A campechana taco. I'm trying to Texas barbecue. Like that. That's what you know what I mean? It's almost like what's on the top of my brains,
Yeah.
on my palate. Like that's what I want. That's what I just want my two faves. And they're titans. They're flavored titans. They may not, play together. It ain't gonna be Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? It's just not. It's more like Run DMC and Aerosmith. You're like, ooh, it's like maybe this will work. I don't know, but that is kind of when I think about my consumption. That's probably happening a lot more than I think. I mean, we're here trying to ooh, let's pair this and that, and they'll just
Yes.
merge so perfectly together. But there's something to be said about what are your two top flavors
Yep.
that you're drinking and that you're eating, and how often do they combine, and how do those kind of work? Because that's almost a different way of looking at it. And I think that's going to be my homework for the rest of the day, gentlemen.
Before we wrap up, speaking of faves, I love chicken tinga tortas. I love them. The
Ooh,
yeah,
good
love them.
choice.
And freshy IPAs, not West Coast, but freshies, like that fresh top
Okay.
Deschutes is
Nice.
perfect. I still haven't found a torta in Denver, and especially a chicken tinga torta, but there were a couple places in LA.
Yeah, the Tinga is not.
Yeah,
I'm
that
I'm
chicken
thinking of.
stew.
I definitely am thinking of for where I am in Southern Orange County. The tacos are spicy. Like that's the main thing. You're putting,
Mhm.
you're almost using it as a way to get more salsa in your mouth, right? The taco is just it's more of
Yeah,
a spoon
so true.
to get in. So
Yeah,
yeah, just a super cold beer on the lighter side is yeah, like a Corona or one of those that just comes to mind. It goes so well with being near the beach and the heat. Whereas
Mhm.
like maybe a Tinga is gonna be a little more complex in its spice and its heat, and also like
hmm
Ali, like you have over there, there's so many different between classic taco styles mixed with the barbecue. I mean, you have a whole different range
yeah,
of palate out there, as opposed to out here is beer battered fish, carne, pastor,
sure.
a crap ton of salsa. So
Yeah, there is something bright, but it's something that it literally has got me to make up my salsa game. Well, first of all, I had no salsa game. Now I have a bit of a salsa game, but it is so true. In Southern California, like freaking taco trucks, they all have so many
yeah,
dope salsas,
Yes.
and like there's pain. I mean, when I think about, I'm making this stuff at home and I'm using a tablespoon and I'm like overwhelming myself. Definitely my wife. It's like, oh, sorry, that was too hot. But I remember they use a little and it's like, ooh, it burns. And I know what you're saying about that Corona because you're looking for
right,
relief. You're
Yes.
looking for relief with some alcohol. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. And
You know,
that's something to consider for
you know
sure.
what my favorite salsa was? Best fish tacos in Ensenadas. The little
Yeah.
shack
Mhm.
on Los Feliz. They had and it said hot, but it was pineapple mango, and it was
Wow.
seriously hot. I love that salsa. You just get the fish tacos, which they use basa from
Okay.
Baja. It was like a Mexican catfish. It was perfectly. I
Yeah,
love those
that was
tacos
a
so
good spot.
much. You just get three I can taste it right now. My mouth is starting to water. Pineapple mango salsa on top of those. Holy crap.
Yeah. Well, I feel like with that place too, they fried it to order.
Yes.
Like it was. I mean, from when I first went, and I remember, it's funny. Like fish tacos are one of those flavors where it's like it's very textural. You know what I mean? It is about the cabbage and everything. Obviously, the crispness of the fish, and depending on the sauces you go, it is technically lighter. It's not going to have that deep savory hit like chorizo or al pastor, right? And frankly, you have to have a few. You know what I mean? It takes a couple visits, but then you're like, and then I've been to Ensenada. When you were in Ensenada, and even when you first go, it wasn't like, oh, this is cool. There's kind of ketchup in my shrimp bowl, but I'm into it. I'll just go with it. But then after a while, and you're just out there on the beach, just eating seafood, and you're like, man, this is so good. I'm gonna leave you with this because I made it last night.
Yep.
Something so worth trying. You can get tahini, or I have a chili lime spice that a friend of mine sent me of a spice kit. Salmon steaks on the grill, rubbed in the tahini, and then because it's the salmon steak, it's easy to flip. Shouldn't hot grill, oil grate, it shouldn't stick, and it's firm because of the bones. I just fork off chunks of the salmon, and because it's the steak, you get a great bit of the belly, and frankly, the skin insulates it as well. So it's quite rich, very fatty. That in a freaking taco. There's some shrimp in there too. It's just awesome.
Can you sear that and then smoke the salmon?
I just So the thing about smoking salmon is it shouldn't take that long. You know what I mean? And frankly, if you're grilling it, especially over like some sort of interesting live fire, like you'll get some darn good flavors out of it. I got this kind of a cool new little hibachi kind of grill, and the little charcoal briquettes have this tremendous. I'm like, what's in these briquettes? Why does it taste? I mean, crazy flavor. So I have like done a little bit of hot smoking, and it can be super great on really, really low temperatures. I think with the salmon steak, like you want that fat. See, salmon's funny and it's so versatile, but there's a lot of fat. And the funny thing about salmon is, you want it rare, but it's great when you cook it through because the fat renders, especially a salmon steak cut, because you've got the skin, you've got the belly in there. Just be careful of those bones. There'll be bones. Bones.
Yeah.
There's bones. You just gotta be prepared. But
all right, I'm gonna try this with the tahini.
Oh my God, tahini. An avocado tomatillo salsa would be great. Guacamole would be great. Double salsa it. And I do one with the this is just getting tangential, but use two salsas, a red and a green guacamole. It's delicious.
I want fish tacos now, and I want spicy pineapple mango, and I want a beer. I want it now, and it's only 11 o'clock.
You should try. You know what? If you want to try a good blood sausage, I'll be out. I don't have the German one. I've had them at the Argentinian joint.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
I'd give that a try. I mean, it's like everything else. You never know. Maybe if you just have a small serving, but at Argentinian, dude, ooh, all right, very nice.
Ryan, I think there's a butcher up by Alpine Valley, the German Rec Center or whatever it's called, where they did Oktoberfest. They might still do it.
In Florence?
Yeah.
That place is nuts.
And they have blood sausages for sure.
Bro, they have. I went there once with my kid. Yeah. They gave me a free hot dog, like just in paper, while I waited. And I mean like a freaking hot dog from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. You know what I mean? All like, it was insane. I was like, seriously? And I was literally, like, my kid's just like gnawing on a hot dog. I was like, sweet place.
That's awesome. I will let you guys know if I get brave enough to try one here soon.
It's in Torrance. Buy a single, buy a one-off, and it's basically October. Bratwurst.
Yes.
Well, cool. Let's.
Well, this was fun, guys.
Episode. Thank you so much, Steve, for all the insight onto lager and ale and the differences. And while Ali and I were trying to wrap our head around it as well. So that was great.
Good.
Yeah, lager, just lager versus ale. Just knowing that.
You have to say it with the accent now too. Medieval, German.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Let's sign out and with another episode of Eat This, Drink That. Thank you, guys.
See you guys.